Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Hearthstone is the game, and this is a deck guide for my Old Gods budget aggro paladin deck. Now when I say budget, that's something I mean very specifically. This deck was designed with a 600 arcane dust limit in mind, so you can craft the entire deck for 600 arcane dust or less. Now that said, this is not the kind of deck that can carry you all the way to legend ranks. This deck is probably capable of rank 15, perhaps rank 12, and not farther than that. So this deck is not the best deck ever made. In fact, it has some weaknesses, some pretty distinct ones, but it is good enough for new and growing players to jump right into ranked play and start winning games and start climbing the ladder and hitting that rank 15, getting a nicer chest, getting some extra rewards throughout the course of the ranked play season. So if you're someone who fits that description, a new player, a growing player, a returning player, who doesn't have dust, who doesn't have cards, loves the idea of playing Paladin, sees some identifiable cards in here, and this deck looks like fun to you, then it might be a good choice for you. The budget aggro Paladin is designed as an aggro deck. That means it has a very low mana curve, very low cost minions. It's all about getting out onto the board very aggressively, using multiple minions and multiple buffs in order to buff those minions to make efficient trades through the first few turns, and then very quickly turn the corner and start looking to kill your opponent with big damage, big buffs, charging minions, so on and so forth. So this is not the kind of deck that plays a late game style. You get in and out very quickly, win early or lose early, and do your best to climb the ladder on the back of some hyper aggression. So since this is a deck designed for new players, I do want to quickly run through every single card in the list, hopefully just to teach you why it's in the deck, how it's important, and why it matters. So let's just jump right into the list, starting off with Blessing of Might. This is a 1-mana spell. It's just a very quick and dirty buff. Give a minion +3 attack. Remember, we are trying to do two things in this deck in the first couple turns. Trade up super efficiently. In other words, use cards like Argent Squire to trade in to 4 health minions with a Blessing of Might, right? But also just to do damage. Blessing of Might is good for both of those, so sometimes you'll have that Wolf Rider sitting in hand with a Blessing of Might, and that's a 4 mana 6 damage opportunity between 2 cards right there. So good for trading up early, good for hitting the face as well. Abusive Sergeant is exactly the same kind of thing, but this time it's 2 damage that's temporary for a single turn, and it's attached to a 2/1 body, so definite upside there. Abusive Sergeant's really one of the best cards in the game. It shows up in so many different kinds of decks, and it fits the mentality of this deck absolutely perfectly, so worth crafting there. Argent Squire is the first of many cheap minions that this deck includes. It's a 1-drop, which is nice. It has Divine Shield, which is super good with a deck like this. It includes lots of attack buffs like Seal of Champions, Blessing of Kings, Blessing of Might, Abusive Sergeant. That means it can absorb those buffs and trade up with impunity, burning its Divine Shield without actually damaging its health or killing it. So the opportunity, thanks to that Divine Shield, is much higher with Argent Squire. Acidic Swamp Ooze is a 2-drop that's mostly included because it's a free card that's quite good. It's a good tech answer. If an opponent gets an early weapon that's able to shut out your minions, it can make it difficult to utilize your buffs and trade up and hit face and accrue a board. So Acidic Swamp Ooze can help destroy those weapons while also depositing a pretty solid minion as well. Balefin Tidehunter is one of the many cards in this deck that's just all about getting minions out there. Also, it's important that the second half of this has Taunt, the ooze that is summoned. That Taunt is important because it can protect stuff like a buffed Argent Squire that perhaps is a 4/1, or some of the more valuable minions. It can just get in the way and cause friction for your opponent, plus it's just a lot of stats bundled into a 2-drop. Bluegill Warrior is a card that's just a charge, essentially a nice free charge, similar to Wolf Rider later down the list. It's instant damage, it's instant buff potential, it just gets you out and gets you moving quite quickly. Loot Hoarder, on the other hand, is similar to Bluegill Warrior, but instead of charge, this one draws a card. One downside to decks like this is that you do have a lot of low-cost stuff, so it's very hard to win games past 4 or 5, turn 4 or 5, because you run out of cards too quickly. So sometimes these cards like Loot Hoarder that don't really cause a hindrance to your board presence, in other words, it's still a 2-attack minion. It still has some aggressive tendencies, but also draws you a card to refill your hand to get you stuff like that Blessing of Kings later in the game, and continue pushing and continuing to apply pressure without running out of cards. Now that said, Loot Hoarder and Novice Engineer are both included as sort of those hand refiller options to dig for lethal in the mid game, but don't expect this deck to run past turn 7, 8, 9. Like beyond that point, it's going to be very hard to find lethal against most decks. They'll stabilize behind taunts or heals or various other tools, or just kill you in return because you're not dealing with their board sufficiently. There's also Murloc Tidehunter. This is basically just an extra Bilefin Tidehunter, right, without the taunt. It's just a free minion that's got a lot of stats and loads up the board nicely. Novice Engineer we already discussed. One advantage to Novice Engineer is that the card draw is instant, so sometimes you can top deck Novice Engineer, ride it into a Wolf Rider, right? So it's instant damage. You can ride it right into a buff and buff the Engineer perhaps. So it's got some upsides over Loot Hoarder, but it also just doesn't have quite the body. So it's less advantageous than Loot Hoarder if you just play it onto the board as a minion on turn 2. Seal of Champions is yet another buff. This one is just like Blessing of Might, except this time it's bundled with the Divine Shield. And you'll note that most of the minions in this deck don't have Divine Shield. It's really just Argent Squire. We already talked about the benefits of that Divine Shield. This just puts it all into a single card, carries that same level of aggression and protection for your minions. It's very nice when you can buff up something like a Novice Engineer and make it a 4/1 that's very hard to kill thanks to that Divine Shield. Steward of Darkshire is another new Old Gods card. This one is a 3-mana 3/3 with a really powerful effect. Whenever you summon a 1 health minion, give it Divine Shield. Now, this one's kind of centerpiece to this deck in many ways. This gives you an alternate way to build up the board and really establish value, because those Divine Shields we've talked about countless times already have tons of value. So we have a lot of 1 health minions, you'll note. Novice Engineer, Murloc Tidehunter, Loot Hoarder, Bluegill Warrior, Bilefin Tidehunter, Argent Squire, Abusive Sergeant, Wolf Rider. Every minion except the Acidic Swamp Ooze is a 1 health minion, and the other Steward of Darkshire, I guess, that can be buffed in this way. So if you do this well, if you're able to protect your Steward of Darkshire and get it onto the board to stick, sometimes just getting 1 or 2 Divine Shields can make all the difference and make your minions resilient enough to live long enough to absorb these buffs and extra damage to push for lethal. Now, I don't think you're necessarily going to stick this on the board for 2 or 3 turns and get like a giant board of Divine Shields. 1 or 2 is worth it. So sometimes just comboing this out on turn 4 or 5 with a single minion play can be the difference. Up next is Wolf Riders. This is just a super Bluegill Warrior that's good for all the same reasons. After that is True Silver Champion. This is really just a value weapon for Paladin. Of course, weapons do damage. They can set up favorable trades to protect your minions, but you can also just go to the face for 8 with True Silver Champion. The heal really doesn't matter too much in this deck because you're not that concerned about your own health total, but it's a nice side effect. Sometimes, you know, it might buy you that 1 extra turn you need to find lethal. Blessing of Kings is the big follow-up buff that gives all these little minions basically a second lease on life. So your little ooze from the Bilefin Tidehunter can suddenly be a 5/5 taunt, right? Your Loot Hoarder can be a giant 6/5. There are a lot of ways to make Blessing of Kings very good, and if you're able to stick a minion or 2, this card can straight up win you games because it's instant 4/4 damage, and it makes your minions super duper hard to kill. After that is Consecration, another free card, and you'll note the last 4 cards here are 4/4 drops, which are admittedly a little bit slow for a deck like this in many ways, but hopefully the goal is that you don't draw them all at the exact same time and you do have a good smooth curve. But they're all free cards, right? They're all free with a Paladin set, so they're fantastic for budget players and budget decks like this one. But anyway, Consecration is just 2 damage first off to the enemy's face, which is nice, but it's also a board clear in many instances against equally aggressive decks. So sometimes if you get like a 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana minion out and then your opponent does the same, your Consecration can just allow you to take hold of the board quite firmly by killing a few of their things or setting up hyper efficient trades. It's also just 2 damage that can ignore taunt, right? It just goes through anything that they might have and hits them. On that same note, that's exactly what Hammer of Wrath does as well. This is just a direct 3 damage spell. Much like True Silver or Consecration, it can be used against minions. It can also snipe behind a taunt for killing something super valuable or hitting their face. And the card draw is a nice bonus as well. There will be instances where you top deck this and, you know, you hit their... say they have 6 health and you top deck Hammer of Wrath and you're desperate to win, so you hit their face and then you draw a Wolf Rider and you hit their face again and you win the game. In situations like that, in the late game, Hammer of Wrath can be quite good. So that wraps up the list. It's nothing too crazy compared to some of the past budget Aggro Paladin lists I've made. It shares a lot of cards, but cards like Steward of Darkshire can make a huge difference because there's so much value packed in here. And Balfed Tidehunter is also a pretty big addition to the list just because of that taunt. It's surprisingly good how often it actually matters and impacts games. So that's the list. I don't actually have an upgraded version of this list. In many of my budget decks, I've suggested upgraded versions that you can kind of grow into and continue to craft new cards. The reason for that is that I don't think right now budget Aggro Paladin as an archetype has the legs to warrant continuing to play this kind of class. Now, that said, there are a few select replacements you can make. For instance, a Selfless Hero would fit quite nicely as an efficient 1-drop with 1 health that has a nice death rattle. You might consider an Equality to help you clear a board or get through some big stuff. A Rallying Blade has a lot of synergies with the Divine Shields in this deck, so you can start to build around Steward of Darkshire a little more with Selfless Hero and Rallying Blade. That's a few different ways. Even a Keeper of Oldham might be a better 4-drop than Hammer of Wrath, for instance. So those are some upgrades to consider if you're just absolutely in love with budget Aggro Paladin deck and you want to take it a little further. But I think at some point you need to move beyond the Aggro Paladin archetype and move into essentially a Control Paladin archetype or even a mid-range Paladin archetype. So I don't want to suggest an upgrade and funnel you into a really narrow mindset about what you can do with Paladin. I think this deck is better utilized as an entry point to jump into the ladder, start improving as a player, generating some dust through wins and packs, and then perhaps move beyond the budget Aggro Paladin into something bigger and better, so that you're not just stuck on this same shell of a deck forever. Now that said, it's still a fine deck. I'm not trashing my own deck. I just think it has so many limitations that it's better seen as a starter that you forget about as you grow as a player, instead of a long-term, permanent piece of your puzzle. So all that said, we've seen the deck, we've ran through the cards, we've talked about the potential. Now I actually just want to take this thing out onto the ranked ladder and see it in action. All that said, again, I do have another disclaimer. This is rank 6 that we're currently playing at, as you noticed as I queued up. That's probably the top 2 or 3% of all Hearthstone players in the world right now. Because we're not at the end of the season, it's already a high rank. I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this deck is probably not capable of playing beyond rank 12 or rank 10. So we might win a few games, right? We might even win the next 3 games. It's certainly possible to win with this deck at this rank, but on average, the win rate will drop the higher you get, so it'll be harder and harder to climb. And there's also the scenario that we just don't win any games in the video. So that's a risk I expose myself, but I do want to play it at the top level I can, just to make a more interesting example of the deck and to showcase what it's capable of against obviously legend level players, as you'll note from his card back, playing presumably top tier decks. So this will give us the most insights into the deck. That's an insane answer to this board. It's super annoying. In fact, that might actually be the game. We really needed to have a minion on board that's stuck. This is a challenge here, but we'll see if we can come back from this. Anyway, don't be alarmed if the deck loses the next 3 games I play. It's a risk of playing at this rank, but we'll still learn about the deck and see what it's capable of. Essentially, if he has another good spell here, yeah, man, this is like. Control Priest with Wild Pyro double Power Word Shield is quite possibly the best imaginable answer to our deck. I mean, he knows it too. He's got us pegged already. He's gonna have like a Thought Steal or something here and just ruin our board again. We'll never recover from this. He needs to be at like 15 health right now, and we need to have a buffed minion. Yeah, Thought Steal, man. I don't think I could have picked a worse first game for this list to see. There's literally no way we can win this game, I think. But we're going to try, but I just don't think it's possible. We have to kill this. It's just too valuable. This thing's not as threatening, right? It's unreal how much he did with that Wild Pyromancer. We do have some cards, so it's still possible to make something happen. It's just unlikely. This is a good 6-mana turn. He stole a Bluegill Warrior, and he's... Oh, what? He's flipping the tables on us. I don't have any way to deal with that. See, that's so good. I can summon a couple Divine Shield dudes, I guess. It's really better than nothing, but it's also quite bad. He's got a nice free trade here. He's got some good trades here as well. He can kill one thing of his choice. Gosh, I'm losing my voice a little bit.
Let me change your mind.
Every turn has been the perfect counter. What can I do? What on earth could I ever do? It's very important to stick a minion in this deck. You have to have something on board. Like, these buffs are totally useless to me. This is actually halfway decent, right? We'll just wait it out. We're going to wait and see what happens. We can Consecration Wolf Rider and perhaps clear his board. This is not the kind of game this deck wants to play, though. We want to be in his face. Making him dictate trades. We're currently dictating trades. In other words, we're the ones trading. That's fine. That's what we wanted to happen. Play a 2 health thing. That's got a ton of more health than 2. That has like 8 health. That has like 6 extra health. God, I could even clear that one and leave this one with a Blessing of Might, but I don't know if it's worth it. I do have 8 mana. Well, we'll do it just to see. I mean, it's really bad. It's just blatantly awful. But like I said, he's got 9 cards, 25 health. We're losing very hard. That is something we can't deal with. Watch the plays here. This is legitimately as bad as it gets. I guess I actually did that wrong. Oh, but it worked out. He didn't have a dragon. Quite on tilt. We obviously should summon the minion next, after we killed the dragon, to prevent the death rattle from killing it. I'm just playing this out for the sake of a good video and a cohesive experience, if you will. Unless I accidentally snuck Tyrion into our list, I don't think we have a shot. And even then, we didn't even draw a 1 health minion. Of all the minions we have, we actually do the 1 2 health minion, so we don't even get to utilize the buff here. That's a little bit unfortunate. He should have close to lethal. He has 9. I'm sure he's running Arcanite Soul Priest of some sort, like Flash Shield Arcanite to just win the game. He might toy with us a little bit though, out of poor sport. Yeah, he should go face. He's not. He's smart. Bluegill will win us the game for sure. So you can see here how effective the Steward is if it lives. Obviously, he just let it live because he knows the game is over. But it's really quite fun to get all these Divine Shields. So we took him to 16. What are you gonna do? Yeah, Wild Pyro, Powered Shield is it's a brutal world to live in as an Aggro Paladin, for sure. No style. No style. Does he? No, he still has it. Okay. Taking him a little while to figure it out. He's pieced together lethal. He found it. He found it. Good job. It's his first win of the year, actually. Good job, dude. So, bad start, but we'll continue on. See how it goes. We should wait. We don't want to get that guy again. There may be few enough people on that we queue similarly, so I should wait. We actually had a decent start to that game. It's just he had the ultimate counter, so it's unfortunate that we ran into a control priest of all things. It's not that common right now. Rogue will be intriguing. They have a good answer with a weapon, right? Because we have a lot of 1-health stuff. But if they're continuously using the weapon to ping off our guys, then they can take a lot of damage, which can be a bad side effect. So I sent back the Loot Hoarder because we do have a good 2-drop and some 1-drops, and I want to get as much junk out as I can right away, as opposed to trying to draw a card off the Loot Hoarder. I'll go ahead and play both Argent Squires here. And likely play the Tide Finner, the Tide Hunter, excuse me, next. We could Blessing of Might, depending on if we get another 1-drop or not, and what he plays. So Blessing of Might looks pretty good against that. I'd like to see another 1-drop, though. No, I'll just go ahead and... this is really susceptible to Fan of Knives. But I think it's better to do it early than late. It's less likely he has Fan of Knives right now as opposed to later, right? He has it. He actually has Fan of Knives. Wow. What? Yeah, me too, bud. So the decision there, right, is he's only drawn 6 cards, or 7 or whatever at the point that he played that. So if I wait to play more stuff later, there's a chance he top decks to Fan of Knives. Somehow he actually had it in his opening hand. I don't think anybody keeps it against Paladin right now. Nobody's running Aggro Paladin. Everyone is running like N'Zoth Paladin. So there's like virtually no reason to ever have Fan of Knives. He must have just lucky mulliganed into it. So we, again, does he have a second Fan of Knives? This is the life I lead. This is where I live. This is the home I live in. This is like Hearthstone. This is just normal Hearthstone for me. I am a writer for TempoStorm.com, and it's quite clear that Reynad has passed on his RNG to me as one of the team members, and this hand is totally unusable. So great. That's also awesome. Yeah, so again, off to a bad start. If he does have to use his hero power here, it's not bad. If he leaves it alive, it's also not bad. Just saps it, okay. Sap on a Silverhand Recruit, actually not bad. I had to buff immediately because that's all we had. We'll try this out and see sticks. That's a pretty good draw. We'll hero power here instead of playing this one because it's on curve. So he can't Fan of Knives here. There's actually a shot some of this stuff sticks and we start pressuring for tons and tons of damage. Backstab. He's just tearing my board apart piece by piece. It's brutal to watch, in fact. He should trade both. He probably will. He's smart. He's a legend level player again. Yeah, he made the right play there. Consecration wouldn't be too bad. I'll wait. He can kill all 3, but I'm sure he found a 3rd Fan of Knives somewhere. He just magically pulled it out somewhere. There's no doubt in my mind. So we open with the Wild Pyromancer into double Power Word Shield against the Priest, and then we open into the double Fan of Knives Rogue. This is where we live, guys. Yeah, I know it's well played. The game has been over since the 2nd Fan of Knives. Great stuff. Great, great stuff. I love when this stuff happens on video, especially. That always makes it the most fun. So I've gotten off to a bad start. Hopefully when you try this deck out yourself, you don't run into the most ridiculously over-prepared possible opponents. This deck is quite fantastic against decks like Zoo and Aggro Shaman. Even Warriors sometimes have trouble with it, depending on if it's tempo. Control doesn't always have as many whirlwind effects. Tempo often does okay thanks to the Ravaging Ghouls. Druid can struggle a ton, even with Swipe. It usually comes too late to matter, particularly with all the Divine Shields. So we'll see if this is an Aggro Shaman or not. This might give us a better indicator of what the deck is capable of. I don't think he's going to have something like Lightning Storm to ruin us, but it's possible. It's probably likely that he's running like Earthshock, Lightning Storm. Even Tunnel Trog is actually pretty rough to start against, just because the stats line up really nicely with all the 1 health stuff that we play. We'll go ahead and coin out the 2 here. It's nice to have the Abusant Sergeant. If he plays a Totem Golem, we can trade up using the Balefin. But I'd like to see another 1-drop in that instance. Okay, that's actually a good slow start for him. Another 1-drop would still be good. We'll play the 2 because it's on curve. It's probably the worst 2 we could play. The Loot Hoarder would have been far superior. If he Lightning Storms here, it's actually not that bad. We don't have much out there. Probably gonna see a Tuskar. Lightning Storm. Okay, so we are actually running into every imaginable counter for our deck. Thought it would be aggro, but it's clearly some sort of mid-range shaman. Thankfully, he doesn't have much mana to work with, so we may be able to capitalize the board here pretty nicely. We got 2 good buffs for tons of damage. We do need to be mindful of the eventual thing from below. It's going to try to stall us out, but Earth Shock is a really disastrous effect against me right now, but very few people are running Earth Shock. Most are running Hex, right? So I don't expect to see an Earth Shock here. If I do, it's par for the course so far, right? We already saw the Lightning Shield. We saw the Earth Shock next, I'm sure. Here it is. Nope. Nice to see a hero power here. Okay, I can work with this. So we have 8 damage. The Consecration here, I think, is just too much to pass up. And we're going to split our minions a little here. It is true that this one's slightly harder to kill, so there's a chance. But if he has a way to kill one or the other, then we kind of split our stats. And that's helpful sometimes because it splits your resources across a single thing. I don't even know if I mind that. That just got really sturdy. I can Hammer of Wrath that, or I can just Hammer of Wrath his face and play the Tidehunter. And I think that is a better alternative. I probably should have drawn the card first, but this is the best 2-drop I have, so I don't see a world where I play any other 2-drop. And he's in a rough spot here. He needs a second Lightning Storm, but even that doesn't quite deal with this. But we don't have any direct damage right now. We have some. True Silver Champion, Hammer of Wrath, a couple Chargers. But right now we just have minions, so it is important that our board actually survives. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. Is that enough, though? I don't know. It's intriguing that he didn't kill the one with attack. That seems like it lines up really favorably for me then. In fact, do I have a clean way to do this, though? I don't think I do, unfortunately. I don't see a way to do exactly lethal. Do I have it? Oh, I do. I'm dumb. I thought this had 3 health, but it only has 2. I'm just really bad at math. All right, cool. the Dominator got dominated by the budget Aggro Paladin. So that was the deck in action a little more cleanly, and I don't even feel like we got off to a good start. In fact, we played a Novice Engineer on 2, which is bad. He had the Lightning Storm, which is bad, and we still just recovered. We got minions out, they didn't die, and we were able to use our buffs to push for tons of damage over a few turns, and just we just won the game. So that's a really kind of an iconic example of the deck. So I truly think that's going to wrap it up for me on this deck guide. I think you've seen what the deck is designed to do. You've seen me make a few early game trades, but mostly just turn towards face. You've seen me buff stuff. You've seen me mulligan. I feel like we pretty much covered it all with the budget Aggro Paladin. That said, if you do have any questions about the list or gameplay decisions or general strategy, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm happy to address them. I think this deck is a lot of fun. It's very fast, which is good for laddering. And as you can see, it has the potential to win games even all the way up to rank 6. So it's quite competitive as well. So I hope you do enjoy the budget Aggro Paladin here in the Old Gods era. I thank you so much for watching, and until next time, game on.